Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to do just nothing but doing our personal balance sheet. I think it's something that a lot of people don't do. They just kind of assume it. People just assume, well, I know what comes in and what goes out. I know what my income and expenses and assets and liabilities are. Well, that's not so much the case. I know a lot of people that think that they know what these numbers are, but they confuse things. For instance, there's a lot of items that are in their asset bucket that are actually liabilities, and they maybe underrepresent their expenses. People tend to expand their lifestyle with their income, and they don't think about debt service. They don't think about all of the their expenses that may come as a result of their liabilities, which are actually assets that are improperly categorized. We'll get into all that. And we're also going to talk just a second about how do you have the same happiness as a millionaire? You say, oh man, what if I never get $1 million? What is my magic number? Well, there's actually an amount of money. We've talked about this a lot in the digital heavyweights. And there is an amount of money-ish, we're in 2023, that in a non-ridiculous place, like I would say that in Los Angeles, this probably doesn't count, or maybe Manhattan or Miami, but just about everywhere else, this will be an amount of money each month that if you make this above and beyond your debt service, your liabilities, your expenses, this pile of money equals happiness. Okay, so we will cover that, and we will do a personal balance sheet together, all of us, over the next few minutes. And this is something that I want everyone to do. If you can see this video, you won't. Most of you won't. Probably 900% of you won't. Matter of fact, as an interesting aside, I want you to put a like on the video if you are going to do this today, right now. See, I'm letting you cheat because a lot of people would put a like and they really have no intention. But be honest. If you're going to do your personal balance sheet today, this day, right now, put a like on the video. If not, don't. Don't come crying when you don't know how much money's going in and out and you never reach that number. You have to you can't have a moving target. You have to have a destination. When you go on a trip, you buy plane tickets, you don't just go to the counter at the airport and be like, surprise me. Or at least you shouldn't. I don't even know how you would get to the counter because you got to go through TSA. Anyway, we'll be right back and we'll get all that started. Okay, it I guess bears mention. We've talked about this magic number, and you might say, well, okay, I don't understand the magic number. What is the deal? Okay, so the way the magic number works is, and this was determined by a group of, okay, I understand. Some of them were economists. Many of them were in field of psychology, and they studied all sorts of trends in sentiment, buyer behavior, savings behavior, all this kind of stuff. And without getting into gory details, essentially, the magic number to achieve the same happiness as a millionaire is not actually unattainable. Turns out, if you can achieve the same happiness, meaning you can basically buy the same stuff. No, you won't be buying big ticket items, but your quality of life will be the same, right? You'll be able to go on trips. You'll be able to go to restaurants. You'll be able to lavish yourself with the finest foods the land has to offer. The people will rejoice. They will carry you. They will hoist you over their heads and feed you the finest meats and cheeses the land has to offer. Well, I don't know about that, but you can achieve the same happiness, the peace, the well-being of a millionaire, and also like the calm and serenity that comes with not stressing about bills. If you generate an extra 8 to 10,000 per month, again, in a non-ridiculous city. So if you live in a ridiculous city, probably tack on 20, 30% of that. So okay, anybody else that lives in LA, go ahead and call that 13 to 15,000. You live in Manhattan, you live in, right? But you get it. In a relatively aggregate city where things are not completely out of control, stupid, 8 to 10,000 bucks a month after expenses, liabilities, and debt service paid makes you happy. And that's pretty dang good. So the goal is to get out of debt, to understand our balance sheet, which we're going to do here just now. And we're going to understand income, expenses, asset, liabilities, how they all work together, and how what they end up producing, the integer that it spits out, which hopefully is positive, is cash flow. Now, why else is cash flow important? Well, out of that 8 to 10,000, your happiness number, you want to be in, I think you should be considering investing that money into some place where the currency units will extend or amplify, multiply faster than a rate of inflation, whichever way you measure it. And again, remember, inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. There are political events and things like that, geopolitical events that can make prices go up and down. You see oil prices go up and down all the time. That's not inflation and deflation swapping every 3 days. There are price effects that are non-monetary in nature. But when you're thinking inflation, you should be thinking monetary, meaning more money units into the system, debasement of currencies, printing more currency, whether it goes into defense contractors' pockets or just gets lost, like gets lost. That was money got like $2 trillion in defense money just got lost. Like, well, we don't know where it is. 2 trillion? How are you going to lose, man? 2 trillion? Anyway, so ideally you want your bucket, your cash flow, to create an amount of currency units that you can then take some of those currency units and put them to work. Make your money your employee. Make your money work for you. Make your currency units your employee. Your assets, if they're cash producing, make them work for you. Make them your employees. Once you have a bunch of employees, you no longer need to be an employee. Especially if you don't have a choice, right? If you get displaced by some technology or software or another person that's better utilizing AI or something like that, there's all sorts of reasons, life reasons, why you might not want to be an employee forever, and you might want to be an employer. Make your money your employees. They will work for you. And at a certain point, my number is when my money makes 5 times my income, just my money, on a continual basis, I'm done working for somebody else. I may choose to work for somebody else, but I don't need to anymore. But don't think that, oh, my money barely makes my income. If I make 100,000 a year and my investments are producing 100,000 a year, I can't quit because I'm not doing any better. I just broke even, right? The beauty too that your investments, if they're longer term, if they're more kind of patterned around, or at least the thought in going into those investments is more of an infinite goal rather than a finite goal. Instead of trading, you're investing 2, 3, 5-year outlook. It's a lot less emotional stress. It's a lot less burdensome day to day, clicking around, banging around. And it can be more intellectual rather than technical. So I would just keep that in mind. So anyway, the idea is get a pile of money in the cash flow equal to $8,000 to $10,000 a month to get that millionaire happiness number. Take some of those currency units, divert them towards investments so that they can compound, whether it's some kind of compounding interest scenario or whether it is some other investment that you think will beat inflation, debasement, bad behavior in the economy, etc. You have to beat indexes, because if you could just index in, well, everybody indexes in together. That's like the tide lifting all the boats and lowering all the boats. You're not winning if you're indexing, because everything else around you is indexing at the same time. So you think you're winning in the stock market, but everybody's winning right alongside. Guess what? If everybody's winning, no one's winning. If everyone's pretty, no one's pretty. That becomes the aggregate, the average. So just bear that in mind. All right, so now we know the number. We know it's going to take $8,000 to $10,000 per month extra to live happiness. You're not going to spend that every month unless you're a psychopath, unless you're like a super shopaholic or something like that. There's not that much stuff to buy. Like on a crazy month, what can you really buy? You're not going to spend that much. You might go on vacation one month or something like that, but that's not. Now listen, this is per person. So if you have 3 people in your household, you multiply that times each person and then subtract out what they're earning. Maybe they're contributing too, but this is per person. You want everyone to be a millionaire. You want you to be a millionaire. Because if you have 2, 3, 4 mouths to feed, guess what? Your number, this is per person, 4 people, 32 to 40,000. Keep that in mind. Okay. Let's get into our personal balance sheet. Let's get into some personal balance sheet. Okay. So first thing first, let's talk about income. This is easy. Income is, let's go ahead and just write it. Boom. You know what? I'm going to make an adjustment here. I'm going to take away the outline because we don't need an outline. I'm going to change the color to black. Boom. This, get up there. All right. So what is our income? I'm actually going to change the text too. We don't need fancy text. I think we'll just have a regular text. How about that? That looks good. They all look good. This is the problem when you're looking at text. They all look so great. What's easy to read though? Lotto? That looks easy. Okay. We're back. So what is our income? In this example, we're going to say our income is $5,100 per month. Woohoo! Good income, not great, good. We wouldn't hate on it. Wouldn't be terrible. This is kind of a cool little thing. Okay, boom. So we're making $5,100 a month. That is in the plus category. That's good. That's money coming in. Now, if I were you, I would back out taxes. So I'm assuming that you're making $65,000, $7,000 a month, and this is your after tax. So I think we're going to write after tax income. Why? It's more genuine. It's more honest. We want to be in this work intellectually honest. So $5,100 after tax. Now, each one of you should be writing your after tax income. I want you to, everybody here, everyone, income, expenses, assets, liabilities, and below cash flow. Great. So we got $5,100 coming in. Woohoo. What are our expenses? Well, we count up our mortgage, we count up our car payment, we count up our da-da-da-da-da. Let's say that number is $2,600. Man. We're going to put a little thing here. Guess what we're going to do? We're going to put it in parentheses. Why? Because it is in the negative. That goes against us. Okay. And that's pretty easy. That's all of your expenses. $2,600. So what does that give us? Well, income. Sorry, let me do this. Make a new box. Minus expenses. That's important. Boop. And I'm going to make this red because, you know, man, that's negative. Okay. So income minus expenses. Okay. What does that give us? 2,500. Am I right? If I'm wrong, you're going to have to just put it in the comments because this video was being pre-recorded. Let me do something to make this a little bit easier to read as well. Let me get rid of that. Yeah. Isn't that better? This we're going to leave. Well, we're going to adjust it too. Let's get rid of that outline. No, there we go. All right. So our income minus our expenses, that's going to give us about $2,500. So far, our cash flow is plus 2,500. Okay. We're not quite millionaires yet, are we? No. We're going to have to do some adjustment. I think I'm going to make the cash flow green. I think that's a fair green. Is it not? I think we'll give it an outline. All right. So we're at 2,500 cash flow. Great. Sounds good, right? Yes. So far, so good. We are basically a quarter of the way. Let's say we are a little over a quarter. I mean, we ideally, we want to be 8 to 10,000. We really want to times this by 4. So we're a quarter of the way there, a little over a quarter. Okay. Now we have to have another question. We say, okay, what about our assets? Okay. So let's do some asset work. One, we're not going to underline. We're not going to outline. We are going to go black. What are our assets? Well, many of you would say, let's just do a list. House, car, rental property, stocks, potentially paying, well, they would have to pay dividends. Otherwise, they're just investments, which is a fancy gambling. Cash, investments. Okay, we're gonna make some adjustments to this because this may not be a genuine list. It might be even disingenuous. What you say? Okay, but for now, your house, your car, your rental property, your stocks, cash, investments, you get it. And we could even add the other. Okay, what about our liabilities? Well, it gets kind of tricky right here. It's not quite so simple. You would say, okay, well, my car actually, you know what? If you're not renting it, guess what? Your house on rental. Okay. What else? Well, if you're not renting out your car, non-rental or rideshare. What else? Well, this is going to sound strange, but guess what? Cash held long term. Say, well, that can't be a liability. It's an asset that's losing value. It's an asset that's losing value. So I know this is one that's, you can argue it both ways, but I would argue that if you have cash, you traded your time for the money, right? Because you work for somebody. As an employee, even as an entrepreneur, no matter what, you traded life moments, hours, minutes, hours, days, weeks, years for currency units. They gave you currency units. That's the trade. You take those currency units, you put them in a bank account or something like that where they're not gaining any money. Well, now you're losing to debasement in any kind of inflationary effects, monetary price effects. If the cash is not worth as much, even at the Fed's target 2% inflation, which is bogus, it's not their target. That was New Zealand set that up. That was just a guess that they made. It was based on nothing. It was simply a guess. It was some dudes spitballing. They said 2% inflation target. Sure, done. So, but even at 2% inflation, did you know that in 20 years, the buying power of your currency units is cut in half? Cut in half, 50%. So $1 million 20 years later is 500,000. 20 years later is 250,000. 20 years later is 125,000. 20 years later, 67. You see where this is going, right? 6750. So, you need to make sure that your cash is not dwindling. If your cash is dwindling, guess what? Well, your house is obviously, if you're not renting it out, it's obviously a liability. Why? You got to mow the yard, do the pool, get the drains clean, the roof redone, HVAC. You got to paint. You're doing little nip tuck stuff all the time. A house it's not a concrete structure that cleans itself. And even then, you have to pay electricity, water, power. I mean, like think about all of the bits and pieces that go into this liability that you have on the asset. Oh, it's an asset because I'm making money. You're not making money. You're breaking even. You look at the housing market over time, no one, unless you're buying in weird kind of situations, non-normal situations, you're not making money on your house. Now, some people do have, but I want you to think about this. Oh, I made money. My house is worth 4 times as much. Yeah, because every house is worth 4 times as much. So you sell that house, and where are you going to go? Oh, well, I'll just go get another one. Yeah, and pay 4 times as much. You didn't make anything. You just indexed with the market. So if the market rises and all home prices go up, then when you go to the next home, you pay the difference. You didn't make any money. You just indexed with everyone. Unless you become a permanent renter, which I actually like, but unless you become a permanent renter, you didn't make nothing. Does that make sense? So if we're being honest, houses are not on the list. It's not an asset. And even when it's paid off, it's not an asset. You got property taxes, you got munis. Depending on where you live, they can just erode you to dust. Property taxes in LA can be as high as 1.5% from I think 0.85 to up to 0.89 to 150 basis points a year. That means in about 60 years, you bought the house another time. So you look at debt service, you look at property tax, you look at all the nips and tucks, and you're not making money. Now, occasionally there are little pockets. There are times when you make money on a house because you bought in a down market and things went up. That's an investment strategy. But as a general rule, you're not making money on a house and it is not an asset. So unless you can prove otherwise, and you got to be honest, you got to be intellectually honest, house is not on the list. Okay, car. A car that you own, you still have to pay insurance. You still have to service it. If you're leasing it or if you're financing it, oh, it's definitely not on the list. And I'm going to guess that most people are not doing ride share. And even then you're still servicing it. But most people are not renting out their vehicles. I rent out all my vehicles. But if you're not, that comes off of there. Now, rental property is an asset if and only if the renters are paying the difference. Does that make sense? So what I mean by that is you're making all of the service, all of the debt service and financing and upkeep plus extra currency units, okay? Plus whatever time you devote towards dealing with them. Your time costs money. So if all of that is in the positive, yes, a rental property is an asset. Great. Obviously, commercial investments, things like that. Stocks, bonds, and things like that. Dividends. If dividend pays on a stock, yes. If it doesn't, you have to decide whether if it's a gamble. It's not really an asset because it could go down, it could go up. Let me just say this, it's an asset that can have potentially diminishing returns just like that cash. And if you have a margin account, oh wait, I don't want to put that there. Hold on. Let me nix that. I need to put that in there too. Stock on margin or leverage. Guess what? If you buy stock with margin or leverage, that is also a liability. Ask all those dudes over at Melvin Capital about shorting stock and whether their assets were where their trade positions were liabilities or assets. Liabilities all the way to zero. So your cash, ideally, it's making money for you. So, I mean, not all of you are doing reverse repo, but you may be in bonds, money market. Now, are those beating inflation? Very doubtful. I would say no, they are probably not. But it's at least worth entertaining. Okay, in investments, I'm just going to say that you're going to be intellectually honest with yourself and that these are investments that return more than inflation effects, debasement effects, and political and geopolitical price effects. Does that make sense? Okay, so this is just a basic way of thinking about this. And in your assets, you kind of minus your liabilities from your assets. You have to be honest with yourself. Don't fudge the numbers because this is your number. This is you looking in the mirror and saying, how do I get to $8,000 to $10,000 extra per month? Because out of that cash flow is going to come your investable income. So some component of that, I say be frivolous with 10%. So if you're making, I know this sounds bad, but if you're making $2,500 a month in cash flow, then you can be frivolous with $250. Doesn't sound like much, does it? No, get your cash flow up. So Stop doing stupid stuff. Stop spending money on stupid stuff, right? Look at your credit cards. Well, of course, liabilities is any debt service. I probably should add that in there. Any and all debt service that we haven't spoken about. That would be, technically those are into expenses, but you could have debt service having to do with, technically that's redundant. Just make sure that you don't have some student loan or something like that. That should be part of your expenses, but some of those things may not come monthly. I don't know. A lot of those things are structured in weird ways. Just the whole point is you have to be very, very honest with yourself. Make sure your expenses are really a full and complete picture of your expenses. Make sure your liabilities are a full and complete picture of your liabilities. Make sure you're being honest with yourself about what is and isn't an asset, and use your after-tax income so that we get a real number, because you don't want to do all this and at the end of the year you get nuked for 10, 12, 15,000 in taxes, and you're like, crap, my number's wrong. All my income went away. I'm no longer rich. I'm not a millionaire. Remember, we want to live like a millionaire. We have to think smarter than a millionaire. Did you know 1 in 3 people that make $250,000 a year cannot take 1 month off of work, or they would become bankrupt? They would be insolvent. Why? Because they have spread their lifestyle out to the edges of their earning potential, and that is bad. So if we want to get our cash flow up, we either have to increase our income. So what are the chances we're going to get our income up another 75, another 5,500 to 7,500 a month? It's possible. It might be time to talk about a raise. But if that's not realistic, we can cut our expenses. Listen, if I can reduce my expenses by potentially reducing my liabilities, by refinancing, by looking at my debt service, by looking at any kind of things that I think are investments that are actually detractors from my balance sheet, if I can reduce my liabilities, my monthly, I hate calling it nut, but my monthly bills, if I can reduce those and streamline those, that's going to go directly to cash flow. So this is very attainable. Very attainable. By the way, I use 5,100 because 5,100 is the aggregate U.S. income as of like late 2022. So, and I don't think that your expenses would be, you know what? To tell you the truth, I don't know where your expenses would be. I can tell you right now what my expenses are. My place, my car, although the car's not really, because it gets rented out frequently. So I'd say that's probably a wash. Kitty is like $400 a month just because of all the stuff I get her. I'm probably, okay, so if I do my math, I don't know, my expenses are probably eight to 10,000 a month, which is not terrible. It is terrible, but it's not terrible considering, like, got a cool place. And for me, I like my surroundings. The thing that I spend money on myself is just a very calm, peaceful, clean surroundings, good air quality, cool robot that like cleans. Like, my place is very clean and like aesthetically pleasing and calming, because that's what is value for me. I don't spend much money on other stuff because I don't need other stuff. Everybody's got different stuff that they need stuff, and we're all in different places. But the whole point is, you want to get your cash flow to that $8,000 to $10,000 a month mark. Okay. So if you can shrink your expenses, okay, I allow myself $100. I have millions of bucks, but I allow myself $100 a day to spend. If I go over that, then for the next couple of days, I actually like shrink my spending so that I can stick to that $100 a day. You can be like, well, you could spend whatever, X thousands a day. Yeah, I could if I was a dummy and I didn't want to create a future for myself. But we have to be honest. We have to be honest about our shortcomings. We have to be honest about the things we like and don't like. We have to be honest about the reality, the future. what our job prospects look like, what the reality is with AI and robots and software and humans enhanced by AI, potentially doing our work. And then, we become redundant and things like that. And your earning potential over time, the kind of work you do, how many more years do you want to do the work that you do? Right. So if you reduce your thinking to this personal balance sheet, this is something you need to do every quarter, not once a year, not once every 5 years, every quarter, every 3 months, you need to do this. And you need to start from scratch. Don't use the old one. Start from scratch. Do your personal balance sheet every quarter. This is going to help you a lot. This is going to make a huge difference. And remember, the goal is we want to get our cash flow, meaning the extra after everything said and done, between $8,000 and $10,000 per month, all expenses paid. And then we can start thinking about how much we want to divert. And I just told you really quick, if you want to reduce this, income, expenses, assets, liabilities, cash flow, get that cash flow to $8,000 to $10,000. I take half of everything is immediately invested. Now, when I say immediately invested, I mean it goes into an investment account where it is then distributed using dollar cost average strategy. I'm not going to just throw it all in the market on a Monday when I get my paycheck on a Sunday or a Friday night. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just pushing it into the bucket where from there you will distribute those funds in the way that you see best and most fittest for your financial future. Again, to expand that money, to make your money your employee. Make your money your employee. Make it work for you. Listen, be shrewd with that money. Don't let that money take time off. My money gets no time off, no vacation. My money, I hope it gets pregnant, but it's not going to get time off for getting pregnant. If I get airdrops, if I get dividends, if I get stock splits, my money doesn't get, there's no pay. There's no, what do they call that? Some kind of pay when people get pregnant? No. You working. If you spit off an airdrop, that airdrop is working from day one. My money is in a sweatshop. It's not investing in a sweatshop. That'd be intolerant. That would be non-woke. I don't want to get the wokes after me. No, my money works, and my money's money works, and you compound it, and you don't even consider not working until you have 5 times the amount of money coming in from your investments on a residual, on a yearly basis as your income. And if that's the case, you probably need a raise anyway. And every one of you should be asking for a raise every 6 months. Don't get caught in this thing where you're scared to ask for what you're worth. Make sure you get what you're worth. If you're not getting what you're, listen, if you're not getting paid what you're worth, someone else will pay you. People need good people. All right. Let's call it a day. Stay in school. Don't do drugs. Don't do anything that my poor, insolvent, drunk, strung out on meth grandmother, who never does her personal balance sheet, wouldn't do. And remember, she is not Brandon, nor Eric, nor Nancy Pelosi, nor Brandon, who's not Nancy Pelosi, nor Ryan, nor Garrett, nor Elizabeth, nor Emeg. And we will see you in the next one. Please do your personal balance sheet. Don't skip on this. This is super important. It sounds rudimentary and silly and juvenile, and it is probably all of those things. And it's also maybe the most important thing you'll do to realign your financial goals and incentives at the base layer. This is the protocol of your investing strategy. This is the protocol layer of investing. So let's make sure we get it right.